I'm Brigadier General retired Dick Miller. Had the privilege of knowing Jack Minzey for a number of years through his son John and his wife Anna. And as I was sharing during the service that Jack was a tremendous support for me when I was chosen by the U.S. Army War College to attend the school. And we were encouraged to find people to edit our research papers. So I reached out to Jack, and he was more than happy to help. And so we went through 2 years of meeting once a week with research papers and him grading. And the part that I always found humorous was he graded my papers with a red pen. So, being a lieutenant colonel in the Army, that was kind of hard to take at first, but did eventually get better. Jack was also a corporal in the United States Army from 1951 to 1953. He was drafted, and he was what's called a cryptologist, and he worked for the headquarters command in Japan in military intelligence, analyzing, collecting data, and reporting up through the chain of command. And one of the things one of the cute stories was the fact that Jack was a corporal, and he had his own bodyguard. And he thought that was just really cool until he found out that the sole purpose of the bodyguard was to make sure Jack was never captured alive. And then all of a sudden he didn't think it was so cute. But a lot of respect for Jack. He was a proud veteran. He had served honorably. And as far as I'm concerned, I was an honor to know him.
Hi, I'm Annie Hollinsworth, and my Grandpa Minzey story comes from him always supporting us at our basketball games, at Chelsea girls basketball. He was one of our #1 fans when we were playing and when I was coaching as well. And seeing him in those stands was a great honor to have him there, and he will be missed.
Well, have you ever seen Jack Minzey not smiling? I've looked at every photo here today. Well, there's some that he isn't smiling, but the majority of them he is. And that's contagious to me. He was always such a pro person. The glass is half full in the Minzey world. And I'll never forget the fact that he was such a loyal fan of EMU. I'm Dale Leslie, and it was my privilege to know Jack, and I'll remember him as long as I live.
Hi, my name is Dan Minzey. I'm Jack Minzey's second oldest son, and I'm here with my complete family. This is my wife, Barb. Say hi, Barb.
Hello.
And then my children here. We should go first. This is Christina.
Hi.
And then, Jeffrey.
Hi.
And then we have Stephanie.
Hi.
And then we have Samantha.
Hello.
So this is the big family right here. I think we have probably the biggest numbers of any other family that is with us. They were a little limited in numbers, but ended up having 4 children, just like my parents both did. And we also have 2 grandchildren, and 2 of these are actually married, and so their spouses are also here. And hopefully I can introduce those members also to you. And so I was asked to tell an interesting story, and my dad used to always brag about this. And once a year, Eastern Michigan gives an alumni award, and he had received it actually in 2 different fashions. He received his alumni award, and then all of a sudden one year I was chosen to receive an alumni award, and he comes up to me and says, do you know, in the history of this entire award, they've never had a father-son who received that award. So every year, we always returned to the alumni dinner, stood up with the rest of the group, and my dad made sure that he and I got our picture taken at the same time. So it was a wonderful time, and I'm going to miss that now with him.
Hi, my name is Holly Smith. I've known Jack since about the 1980s when I started working at the graduate school at EMU, and I ran the GA program, and I think Jack must have been department head at the time, maybe not. But anyway, I also had to take the minutes at the graduate council meetings, which I always dreaded because I never knew if I was saying too much or not enough. And Jack came to me after I'd been doing it for a while. He must have missed a meeting, and he said, the one thing I love about your minutes is that they're so thorough that I feel like I don't even have to come to the meetings because you say absolutely everything that happened. And that was a little weird to me, but it was. It told me that I guess that I was either doing okay or doing too much. But I love Jack, and I was part of his email chain. All of his weird joking emails that he would send out. I really miss them, and I will continue to miss them and miss Jack. I loved him. He was terrific.
Hi, I'm Dan Minzey, and I'm here with my daughter Christina and her husband Justin, and he's got a story to share about Jack Minzey.
So one of the first times I was over at their house, I was with Christina, and Jack was trying to remember the name of one of his friends who wrote an article in a book and climbed a mountain, and I helped him do a Google search and find out who this was. And every time after that, he always reminded me that I helped him find that guy's name and remembered who he was and everything. And whenever he needed to look something up, he always seemed to ask me when we were over, can you help me find this or help me figure out who this was? And kind of some of those little memories like that are what I'll remember.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jill Hunsberger. This is for Jack. I will always remember Jack supporting so many events that we ever had at Eastern. But for me personally, when Jack showed up at my concert in 2011, around Christmas time, he was so complimentary and came up to me, and he bugged me and bugged me and bugged me for so long to get him a DVD of that concert. And I regret I never got it to him because I didn't have it on DVD. But what I would say about Jack is he not only, me being from Eastern Michigan University, he came to university events, but he also wanted to support all those of us personally. And so to have him come to my concert was wonderful, gratifying, and he was so complimentary, and I will always remember that about Jack.
Dan Minzey, the second oldest son. I'm here with my daughter Stephanie and her husband Nick, and I'm going to have him share a story about Jack Minzey.
Hello. I met Stephanie in 2003, and every Christmas until we were married, Jack made it a point to hang a tube sock on the the chimney. I always thought that was great because it just showed, what kind of a man it was until I was actually official in the family. So we ended up getting married in 2011. So for 8 years, I had a tube sock on the chimney, and it just was his sense of humor. I'm gonna miss greatly, and he just was a great man.
Hi, Dan Minzey here, and I'm here with my son Jeffrey and his girlfriend Sarah. And Jeffrey has a story to tell about his grandfather, Jack Minzey.
Well, I used to always go over there to help him out, cut the grass and do the stuff for snow blowing and all the other kind of stuff. And every time I went over there, he always had some kind of other little tasks to do, whether it was, first started out with cleaning the gutters, so I learned how to do that. I learned how to patch a chimney, paint a deck. So I guess he taught me a lot of little lessons on how to do some housework. And Sarah, do you have anything?
I do have a story. So I remember one of the first stories Jack told me when I met him. He said, so I have this kind of moral story. So there are 3 students who missed an exam of their professors because they were either like they had been partying or they went away for the weekend and they didn't make it back to the exam on time. So they go up to the professor and they ask him, they say, can we make up the exam? And he says, sure, you guys can make up the exam. Just like come tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., and I'll have the exam for you. And they say, great. So they all show up the next day. They're all sitting in different desks, and they open up the packet of the test book, and there's only one question on it. And the question is, which tire was it? So That was kind of the funny, and that was all they had to do with the pass.
My name is Jim O'Neill. My mom is Judy Minzey, second cousin, I believe, to Jack. I met Jack and Esther about 10 years ago. It was supposed to be a short conversation about the Minzey clan, and Jack proceeded to take 4 hours to tell me all about the Minzeys, and I learned a lot, and I'm very thankful for that, as well as my mom. This is the Minzey clan tie, and just really appreciated Jack's knowledge and understanding of the family.
I'm Joanne Hansen, and my father, Harold Hansen, hired Jack when he was out of college here in Valley Schools. I taught for Jack when he was a principal in junior high, and then I also taught for him when he was a principal in high school. And then we both moved to Eastern Michigan University, where we were on the faculty. So I've known Jack for a long time, and certainly respected his abilities to administrate and become a personal friend.
My name's John Pappas, and I'm a colleague of Jack, and we go way back. We were both department heads at Eastern and commiserated many days over the trials and tribulations of being a department head. And we enjoyed golfing together and playing tennis and bowling. And we probably weren't very good at any of those, but we sure had a lot of fun. And Bofi and I are really going to miss Jack because he was one of a kind. So may he rest in peace.
Hi, Dan Minzey here, and I'm with 3 members of my family. It's Stephanie and Samantha and Jeffrey, and they've got kind of a sports story that they'd like to share.
Okay, so we all played sports, and our grandma and grandpa were at every single one of our games, but after we graduated high school, he continued to follow all the people that were on our teams, whether they graduated or not, and he would show up to all of their games.
Hi, I'm Susie Merchant, and I got to know Jack and Esther Minzey because I was the women's basketball coach at Eastern Michigan and am now the Michigan State women's basketball coach. But everybody has funny Jack stories, and I have a million of them too, but I really would like to say that I wouldn't be where I'm at without Jack and Esther's support. And I say that because I was 28. It was my first Division I job. And I was a basketball coach that really didn't understand how to work within a university. You know, all I cared about was winning games and basketball. And he really taught me and educated me and mentored me through becoming part of a campus community and how to create a little bit of a connection between all areas on campus. And I just so appreciate him, his love for education, his love for his university, and the people that he touched. You never forgot Jack Minzey. There's no question about that. And I miss him, and I miss him already. And my prayers are with his family, and just truly blessed to know he was part of my small little window of life here, and appreciate him very much. So love you, Jack, and please rest in peace.
Okay, my name is Terry Fahey. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, a Buckeye fan. And Uncle Jack used to always give me hell about Ohio State, and we always joked around. So one day he was at Lloyd and Joan Pritchard's house in Worcester, Ohio, and I taped I'm a big Ohio State fan to his bumper. And he drove back to Michigan and didn't find out about it for a couple days, that he was an Ohio State fan. So he always held that against me. But Jack, we love you.
I'm Betty Richard, and I just had to come to hear what everyone had to say about Jack, because his humor was a great way to spend the last 20 years of his life so that other people could enjoy it. And he brought much happiness, and I couldn't wait to get the news just to hear what my Jenny had put in the paper about Mr. Minzey's musings. So he made great contribution in my life. I really appreciated what he has contributed to the world.
Okay, this is the second son, Dan Minzey here. I want to tell a story about my father. And this was back in 2000 when I first ran for sheriff, which was this newcomer to the field here. My dad got very involved with it and helped out extensively. And a lot of things you hear from other politicians, they, don't be worried if you come out ahead. You should get maybe a little more than 50%. But remember, being a new guy, you'll be very fortunate if you just cross the halfway point for a lot of particular areas. Well, obviously my father was in charge of Ypsilanti City, and he worked very hard for that area. What I didn't realize is how hard he had really worked. And actually what ended up happening was when the results came in, he actually had hit Ypsi City for 80% of the vote that was in my favor, and people couldn't believe that. So I ended up going to my father and asking him, I said, Dad, you must have really worked hard out there to get that 80% of the vote. And I said, how did you accomplish that? And he said, well, all I kept thinking about was a politician. So I'll let you know, I made a lot of promises, as most politicians would be, but I'm not the guy that has to fulfill those now, so I'm handing that torch off to you. But in all truthfulness, what he did was he worked very hard, called a lot of people, went door to door, and did a wonderful job. What a great guy, my dad.
I'm Jeff Lewis, and I'm representing the entire Lewis family. We've known Jack and Esther for decades. I want to thank Jack and Esther for all the kids, John Minzey, Anna, Nicole. John's my best friend, has been for also decades. And Jack was such an inspiration in my life. I went to Eastern for a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and Jack always was on the sidelines, helping me out whenever he could. His knowledge, his inspiration to keep me to go back, because I'm not the best student on the planet. I owe that all to Jack. And he was a jokester, and he liked sharing jokes with me. And one that he did share with me, being in law enforcement, myself, John, of course, Dan and Dave, we're all law enforcement officials. He always had a few jokes for us. And one time I was talking about a speeder I had, some old guy was speeding through town, and Jack, in true form, just chimed right in and was talking about a friend of his in Florida, an old guy down in Florida. He'd been down there for a while, and one day his friend was going 100 miles an hour on I-95 when a Florida highway patrolman picked him up on radar. And when the trooper had got his friend stopped, he walked up the car and said, "Sir, what are you doing? You're going almost 100 miles an hour on the freeway." And one of Jack's friends calmly explained that many, many years ago, his wife ran off with a Florida highway patrolman, and the man claimed he was speeding because he thought the trooper was bringing his wife back to him. And that's the kind of humor Jack always shared with us, and no matter what your job was or whatever your career was, he always had a joke to fit in there and make the conversation relevant. And for that, I thank Jack, Esther, and the entire Minzey family, because Jack was such a fantastic individual.
Hi, I'm John. I'm the youngest of the Minzey siblings. I was in law enforcement as well, and my dad took quite a lot of pride in having law enforcement officers in the family. And one of the things that I had decided to do, which he was very proud of, is I decided to go back to school, finish my degrees later in life. So as I went back, and I started in my 30s and didn't finish until my 40s, but I went on and got a bachelor's and a master's in ed leadership, as it would be. How about that? That's my dad is. And the reason I went to ed leadership, because I was trying to figure myself, how did that come to be? I'm a police officer. Why would I need ed leadership? And one of the things he sat down and pointed out to me was education isn't limited to teachers and people in the schools. Education is everywhere. And he went over with me about not only how to use it in schools, but how to use it out in the field, how to train other law enforcement. So I was very fortunate to have him explain that to me. He and I love to talk sports. I'd sit for him even before he went in the hospital that day. We were talking about the Michigan basketball run and how Eastern football was going to go. So this is something we did. He was a family person. I know people continue to say that. I am never impressed almost every day when I find out something new about him, even today at this funeral. So how blessed we were. I thank him, and the greatest compliment anybody could say to me when I tell a joke is, "You're just like your dad."
Hi, this is Joyce Kroll. I just wanted to say a quick word that Jack and my dad, Paul Hamilton, and Cecil Waters, and I think there probably was some other people that were the jokesters in church. Before church would start, we'd have to hear jokes from all of those guys, and it was an entertaining time. And thank you.
All right, I'm Michael Minzey, grandson of Jack Minzey. When I look back and think about all the lessons and positive energy he shared with me, I think between the passion, his writing sense of community, and all the jokes he told me, it's really that you don't have to be serious to take life seriously. And I think that's one thing that I'll really take away from everything he shared with me.
My name is Patrick Barley, and I've known Jack for most of my life. Flint, I grew up in Flint, and I went to high school, and my dad was one of the original 3 community school directors, so the Minzey name meant a lot to us because we were there when all the information was being developed for the community education process, and I followed my dad's footsteps. Then I ended up at Eastern Michigan University and taking grad school classes through Jack, and he was my advisor and mentor. I can't imagine anybody who's better as that advisor. He was just a terrific human being. And I remember when I became president of McKay, Michigan Adult and Community Education Association, if our numbers were down for a conference, I just called Jack up and say, hey, would you mind being a keynote? And so the word got out that Jack Minzey was going to be the keynote speaker. We got flooded. We had more people than had room because everybody wanted to hear Jack Minzey speak. He was charismatic. When he walked into a room, the atmosphere changed. And it's still, even after his passing, it's still that way. You can see that in the people who came to today just to say him. So I'm going to say it's a great honor and a privilege to have known this man. He was like part of the family, and I just want to say thank you for being a part of my life, Jack.
Hi, this is Stu Work talking. I taught at Eastern for 37 years in chemistry, but I did know Jack, and my wife and I bowled with Esther and Jack in a mixed bowling league, so we got to know them quite well. What I was thinking to say about Jack, since most everything has been said already, has to do with his writing skills. He writes articles for the Ypsilanti Historical Society publication, and I had just read an article that he wrote about a grammatical rule that says you should not end a sentence with a preposition. And he did a whole article about how ridiculous that was, and he would look at it, and if it sounded right to him, he would go with it. And what I did was I sent him an email, not knowing that he was unable to respond, that I wondered if he knew what Winston Churchill said about that rule about not ending a sentence with a preposition. Winston is supposed to have said the following: that is the sort of grammatical nonsense up with which I will not put.